So to address that 15% problem, we've screwed it up for 100%. And that's where we are today. So the Affordable Care Act, had the good intention of covering some people who weren't covered, but it's gone so much further. It's created this behemoth that we can't implement, that isn't working, and keeps getting delayed. And folks won't admit that it's not working, and it keeps getting delayed. So we've got to do a better job than what we're doing now. Are there parts of the law that are decent? Probably are. And there's the pre-existing condition component covering you guys until you're 26. Maybe that's not bad. But the vast majority of this law is a real problem. When you talk to businesses, when you talk to physicians, you talk to healthcare people, there is a pretty broad issue with the way this is being done. And it's not good. Not good. I don't know that it's going to bring down costs. I don't know that it's going to increase accessibility. We all know people who've been dropped. They've had their policies dropped. They didn't want them dropped. They liked what they had. And it's, everybody will say it over and over and over for the next 6 months. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan. Well, that isn't true. And the question is, when will they come through your plan? Or they keep delaying. So who knows when? Probably after the 2014 election, but they will come. Yes, sir.
Could you just switch gears from domestic policy to foreign policy, kind of touch on, just this week we see the whole Ukraine-Russian crisis, if you will.
Yeah.
Talk about what you see some of the strengths and weaknesses for the U.S. position on global affairs.
We don't have in my opinion, we don't have a foreign policy right now. We're just going from item to item to country and making decisions based on what's happening at that point in time and which way the wind's blowing. And we saw it in Syria. The president drew a line, Syria crossed the line, and we did nothing. So now Putin is looking at us and saying, wow, maybe I can get him to draw a line and we'll see what happens next. And Putin is just doing what he wants to do. And the only threat we seem to have is, well, we won't come to the meeting in your country. He doesn't care, right? Putin is potentially going to get the Ukraine. That he cares about. And I don't know what we have to do now, because the perception is that the United States is weak once again. And people like Putin and others are going to take advantage of that. And you say, well, who cares? It's the Ukraine. It matters. It's parked right next to Europe. And if we're viewed as weak here, what's to keep Putin from building more alliances around Syria and countries in the Middle East? And I think we get further out of that. So it's a sticky one, but we have not been leaders in the global scene. We've got to be. But it doesn't.
Prices went up 20 cents.
That's right. Gas prices went up. That doesn't mean we should lob missiles into the place, right? I'm not saying that. But we've got to engage these folks, and we've got to have a consistent foreign policy that's based on our values, right? And right now we don't have that. Yes, sir.
Secretary Hagel just talked about making some pretty significant cuts to the defense, but I just want to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that he's taking a look at those. There's a lot of detail that will be in the proposed cuts. I do know that it will shrink the size of the military's personnel pretty significantly. I'm not sure that's where we ought to be going right now, given the fact we still have exposure in Afghanistan and other parts of the Middle East. If we shrink back too far, we lose our ability to respond to things, whether it's the Ukraine or something else. And I don't want to be in that position. So I think we've got to be real careful in how we approach this. There are times that Congress will tell the Defense Department, you're getting a weapons system that the Defense Department doesn't want. And we've seen that repeatedly, and that sort of thing has to stop. So there may be an opportunity for some efficiency there. But we've got to be real careful about cutting too far too fast. You guys don't remember that it happened in the late 70s, and we paid a high price for it in our reputation around the world, and it took a decade to rebuild it. I don't want to be in that place again. And I feel we're getting very close to that. We've lost our standing in the world to some degree, and we're talking about cutting the military back significantly. Probably not the best strategy in an unstable world. Yes.
To follow through on foreign policy, at the end of 2013, Office of Personnel Management released a report from the DoD saying that the number of enemy non-combatants, women and children in the Middle East who were killed by inadvertent drone strikes that passed 250,000.
You know, drones, we've actually accelerated our use of drones over the last number of years. And they serve a purpose in that they avoid putting people into combat. But we've got to be more careful in how we deploy them and how we use them. And certainly casualties of that sort are unacceptable. And we've always got to work to ensure that we don't deploy that sort of thing. War is an imperfect business, unfortunately. But it's a problem, it's an issue, it's something we got to think about and work on. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the Federal Reserve.
I'll get there. Yes.
You mentioned the Federal Reserve, like poverty and stability in the market system. What would be some alternatives in your eyes?
To the Federal Reserve, I'm not proposing we get rid of the Federal Reserve. I think the Federal Reserve has to be, it has to be more transparent. We've got to think more carefully about things like, quantitative easing. I mean, I understand why it happened, because there was no other strategy. Interest rates were already so low, you couldn't go any lower. So what are you going to do? Well, quantitative easing is all you have left. And given the state of the economy, I get it. But you've got to get out of that as quickly as you can because it's not the right strategy. And I think that the Fed has been a little overbearing. I think it should be audited, so we're certain what's going on there, right? And that hasn't happened. So I would certainly push for that. And get a good picture of it, get that transparency. I gotta go back here and then come back. Yes.
I wonder, you talked a little bit about, how you graduated with debt,
Mhm.
and, at UNH, we are, I think
One of
the
the highest.
lowest
Yeah.
funded
Yes.
and one of the highest in-state tuition,
Yes.
plus one of the highest debt rates.
Yes.
What do you think about, about public funding, especially in New Hampshire? That's a huge
Yeah.
issue for us. Are you for increased public funding, or what's your perspective on how
Yeah.
to help with student debt?
There are two things that I believe are critically important to the future of any country. One of them is education. The other one is infrastructure. And you've got to invest wisely in both of those things, because without either, you don't succeed as a nation, right? So I believe wholeheartedly that we've got to invest wisely in education. The state of New Hampshire is the lowest in terms of its funding of higher ed. It's a decision this state has made. Keep taxes low, we're going to fund education at a lower level. I may or may not agree with that decision. Let me put it this way, I would like to see more state support of UNH. I think that the state has to think about its future. And if they want young people here to grow the economy, there's got to be some reasonable investment in higher ed to ensure that that happens. Because when New Hampshire residents go away, or when out-of-state students don't come here to study, we lose a great resource. And I think we've got to try to keep that resource in our state. And I think that's true universally. I'm not picking on New Hampshire here. A lot of states have been cutting back funding to higher ed. And it's a balance, right? Because higher ed it's an opportunity that's there, but we've got to fund it. We've got to fund higher ed at places like this, community colleges, and we got to be real smart with our K-12 and vocational schools as well. Those are all important.
So I have a follow-up on that, based on your response, and it's kind of a bit more candid and not as formal as other questions, but I was talking to someone about, the idea of you running for Congress, and one of the things that we talked about was public funding for state schools and how that could really be something that was controversial to the Republican Party. How do you plan to kind of bridge that gap?
I don't think it's controversial to the Republican Party at all. I think that almost everyone recognizes you have to invest in education. The question is, how do you do it, and how do you do it in the most effective way? That's probably where the differences arise between the two parties. How do we do it in a way that really works? And some folks, maybe the other party, would suggest you need more government oversight. For example, there's been a discussion of more government oversight of universities, right? Do we want that? Let's think about our university systems for a minute. We have the best university system in the world, in America. And government really doesn't intrude. At UNH, we make decisions about our curriculum, about the way that we do things. At Ohio State, it's the same thing. It's local decision-making being made by the faculty and the students and the staff of each university, sometimes in coordination, but making those decisions without government influence and government intervention. And we've built the best system in the world. K to 12, we've got government intervention. And it's not the best system in the world. That answers it for me. Pretty much. Yes, sir.
I don't believe you're the first candidate that has said they're going to go to Washington.
Second.
So, yeah. And obviously people go down there and they get swept into the way things are done and
Yeah.
disillusioned, so,
Right.
don't you need 150?
Probably.
The same.
Probably, but you know what? Change begins with one person. And you make things better one person at a time. And if I can get to the right people, build the right coalitions, and get to the folks that are driving the bus, we can change its direction. I'm convinced of that. And I think I can do it. I think I can do it. I won't do it if I don't try. Right. In the back.
Tomorrow, the New Hampshire State Senate is going to be voting on Medicaid expansion. How do you stand on that?
You know, it's a tough issue because there's some federal money coming to help us with that. And then after 3 years, we don't know how much money's left and what will happen. And I think that's the issue that the Senate is dealing with. You know, can we trust the federal government to do what it says it's going to do? And if we pass this thing, are we buying into Obamacare lock, stock, and barrel? And I think there's a hesitation there. It seems to me that, you know, we've got to take us, in this case, we've got to, again, take a step back and look at this one more time, because I don't think this is the best bill to get it done. It's complex. We got to do it right. I don't think this one's quite right. I don't trust the federal government to do what they say they're going to do on this one. I really think that we'll get a couple years into it and they'll start dialing back the resources more than they say. And then we've got a shortfall in our state. And how do we fix that? And we don't want to find ourselves in that position.
Well, most political events kind of focus on the negatives and the issues facing the country. What do you think some of the opportunities are? Those could be economic or...
Yeah, we've got a lot of opportunities. This is the greatest country in the world, period. And yeah, we disagree on how we're going to go forward, but I think just about everybody says this is the greatest country in the world. And we've got a lot of things really working for us. We do have a good education system regardless. And as you pointed out, the best university system in the world. People come from all over the world to come to school here. We have a pretty strong economy. It's on a decent footing right now. It can get much better, and I believe over time it will if we make the right decisions in DC. We have people generally who have a good work ethic and want to work and want to contribute and want to grow the country. And I think most Americans care about our future. And those are all very positive. In fact, those are the resources that you need to really do great things. We've got the resources we need to turn this and to really keep going in the right direction. But you know, you guys feel optimistic. How do you feel about the country? I'm interested in your thoughts.
That's scary.
That's scary. That's scary. It's real scary. It's 17 trillion and growing. It's a problem. And eventually, the interest on that debt is going to become the largest single expenditure in the budget. You're getting nothing for that interest, but you're paying taxes to cover it. So that's a very scary thing. We've got to get that under control. If we don't get that under control, then everything I just said becomes a real, it's not enough. Right? Because you can't tax people enough, you can't generate enough revenue, you can't to get to it. Yeah, that's a big deal.
You hear a lot about the national debt and how it's huge. I feel like for most people, we're not economists, and they just look at that number and go, wow, it's pretty scary.
Yeah, what's it mean?
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
it mean? And if you talk a little bit about, who holds the debt, what countries we owe to the domestic, but also what can just become
Yeah, you know, it's hard to say where it really becomes a problem. That's a big question, yeah.
It's an important one.
It is. I'm trying to think how to attack that. It's an entire semester. So when you come at this, what's the most important part of that question to you?
At what point,
Does it become a problem? It's a problem now. I mean, if you look at the federal budget and you look at the places where the money is going, and you look at the size of the interest payments, and off the top of my head, I don't have that number, but that payment on the debt itself is a giant number. A number that could solve many, many problems that we have, but we can't spend it because it's got to go to the people who are holding the debt. Now, who's holding the debt? Everyone talks about China. China's buying our debt, and they are. Yeah, but they don't have quite as much as people think sometimes, and China is tied to us economically. China will call the debt, and they won't stop buying our debt, because if they do, our economy starts to spiral down, and we stop buying from them. So there's a close economic connection there. But some of the biggest holders of the debt are us. I mean, we buy bonds, Americans buy bonds, an awful lot of it is actually here in the United States. We talk about it being elsewhere, but a big chunk of it is here. But it's a problem now, and it will continue to grow as a problem as we pile on more debt at an ever faster rate. We've got to slow this down and start retiring, ideally. That's, again, 5 to 10 years away. It's not a problem that developed overnight. It's not a problem to fix overnight, but it can be fixed. And we had our last surplus, what, in the 90s? We can get there again. But, you know, it's from the 90s to today to get to where we are. It takes some time to get out of it. Yes, sir.
You talked a lot about small business, and there's a lot of like loopholes and things to jump through that you can get one off the ground. What kind of policies are you looking for to help small businesses grow?
You know, I think one of the best things we can do is help encourage banks to lend money and make it easier for them to do so. The biggest problem that we've had probably in this project with the Hotel Portsmouth has been working with the bank. And the bank's they're doing fine, but the regulations that are put in place with Dodd-Frank and some of the others really dramatically increased the reporting requirements and made it really difficult for us and for them to do business. And banks are much less able to lend money now than they used to be, and that slows things down. That's a big one. Regulation is another one. There's some regulation that makes sense and that you need to have. There's other regulation that's just there, and I mean, we see it every day. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head for regulation we've run into that, you know, there's so many.
The forms.
Yeah, and there's a form with everyone, and there's someone pushing that form around after you turn it in.
And 2 more forms
Yeah.
to clarify the first form,
Right.
sign off on that form.
Yeah. I mean, there's actually a form. If we pay a contractor using money that was lent to us by the bank, they have to sign a document indicating that they were paid. Well, we know they were, because there'll be a canceled check. But also that they release the bank from all future claims against the bank if something happens. I don't know what. But they have to sign that. So we have to get that form every time we request more money for the bank, from the bank for the construction. And poor Doug has to have them sign it. And we have to get that to the bank. I mean, is that a big deal? No, but it takes time. And it takes our time away from doing other things to grow the business and to make it better. And it's that sort of thing that starts to weigh you down after a while. I mean,
It makes you think twice about doing it a second.
well, and that's what I was going to say. You know, you think twice about doing it again. Do I really want to do this again? We shouldn't have that thought, right? It should be easy. Yes.
How do you think we should go about balancing the budget? Should we just cut or raise revenues, or
Yeah.
how do we go about that?
If we get sensible with our spending and get Congress to vote on every spending increase, to make them make the decisions, I believe that we'll start making better decisions, and the rate of growth in the budget will come down. There are a number of areas where we can probably shave some things out and do a better job. Consolidate, be smarter in the way that we do things, maybe certain areas shrink. But we've got to hold Congress's feet to the fire and make them vote on this stuff. Right? So that helps. Reforming the tax code, particularly the business tax code, will help because you'll create an environment where businesses are comfortable growing. And this gets to your question. Releasing the uncertainty around Obamacare by turning back parts of the law or maybe throwing it all out will help because businesses will understand the landscape. And when all of those things start to work together, businesses start to grow again. And when they grow, they hire more people, pay more taxes, and they pay more taxes themselves. And the next thing you know, you're growing your way out of your problem. We saw it in the Reagan years, right? Taxes were cut and revenues went up. It made no sense then, but that works, and it works time and time again. Right? Encourage growth that'll help everybody.
So you wouldn't support any tax increase at all, on the way back to?
I would support a reform of the tax code. I don't support an increase in rates. No.
So, have you observed or noticed the Americans for Tax Reform? Any chance, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think,
I have not paid much attention to that, I'll have to admit. So I don't really have a thought to share on that one at this point.
okay, I was going to ask you a little bit of a related question.
Sure.
Do you think we'll ever get to, or I guess let me preface it with this, here we are at an event, at a university, where, somebody's running for the United States Congress, and you have, 20, 25
Yeah.
people here, including staff and everything, so most Americans are pretty apathetic and, quite frankly, don't care about what's going on in Washington. They hate it, but they don't care.
Right.
And do you think that, most Americans are pretty moderate, they're pretty thrown for Congress, it seems like, you are a very reasonable person who thought out on these issues, but it's going to be a lot different when you get down to it. The vote of one member isn't really all that, consequential, and, most of them end up toeing the party line, in order to get reelected, because as soon as you get elected in January, you're going to kind of start campaigning again. So how can we, I guess be sure that, when you get down to Washington, you're not going to be just, voting with the party line, and just reinforcing the same old partisan issues?
Yeah, I have never been well, put it this way. I've always stayed true to my values and my beliefs, all of my life. And I don't see that changing. The key in going to Washington is to make sure it doesn't change you and that you remain true to the people who put you there, right? And when I get there, I will be there to represent New Hampshire, period. And that's what I will live to. And I'm absolutely committed to that. At this point, all I can say is that that's what I will do. And I hope to have the opportunity to show you that's what I'll do. One more? Okay, sure. Which one of you will it be?
Two more.
Two more? All right, we'll take them both. Okay.
Yeah, sure. So what are the two most important places you want to see government money being spent, and what are the two places where you think we need to cut government spending?
Two places, education and infrastructure. In terms of cuts, Obamacare would be one, absolutely. And that probably counts as about 10. But that is clearly an area where we can make some cuts and reductions. Beyond that, I think it's a matter of looking at everything that we do and asking ourselves, is this adding value to the country? And making those decisions almost on a case-by-case basis. There's a lot of opportunity to be more efficient. There's a lot of opportunity to shrink some agencies down and still deliver the service levels. And we haven't looked at government with an efficiency mindset in a long time. It was done a number of years ago. We haven't done it since. And there's almost always an opportunity to be much smarter than we do. You get to end it.
Yeah, I know. This will either be good or bad.
It'll be good.
Well, it's a women's rights question, which
Okay.
is considerably controversial in our current political system. But I'm wondering what your thought is on a woman's right to choose. There are some states that have outlawed abortion,
Right.
and also like the accessibility of contraceptives is also always a question.
Yeah. My position on abortion and choosing is I don't like abortion. Period. I believe there are almost always better answers. And tough subject, you're right. It's a touchy subject for a lot of people. Having said that, I don't believe that it's a place that government ought to be playing. I think it's a decision that should be left to the woman, left to her partner, family, physician, and that decision should be made by the woman, not by the government. So that's my position. All right. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk with you. I will say these were good questions. I wouldn't have expected anything less from UNH students. And I'm really glad to have had the chance to answer them. I'll hang around a little bit after. And yes, or am I whisked out of here?
You're hanging around.
I'm hanging around? Okay. These people take care of me. Let me close real quick by saying, a year ago, I would never have thought I'd be standing here running for Congress. And I'm here because I care about the country and because I want to make it better for you and for everybody else. And I think we can do that. I know we can do that. We've got to get to work, and we've got to get to work quickly because we are running out of time if we don't turn the ship around. And with your help, I want to get down to DC and do that. So learn more about my positions, visit the website, keep paying attention. We'll be putting more on the website as more position papers come out. I'm sure we'll do another event here, right?
Absolutely.
And certainly in September, when it really, August and September, when it really starts to cook. The primary is the first week and a half in September, and we'll be communicating with you much more up to that point, and then the general's in November. So we look forward to it. All right, thank you.
Well,
Want to say anything?
yeah. Join our group on Facebook. If you are now on the Innis bandwagon, we really appreciate it. We need as much support and help on campus as we can get. If you have any questions about how to get involved on campus or how to get involved with the campaign, come to me. I can put you in touch with the right people.